Mihrimah Sultan, the woman who made the sun and the moon rise together and turned half the empire to ashes. 21st March 1522, the night the sky changed forever. The Bosphorus was frozen at the edges. Snow fell so thick that the call to prayer from Hagia Sophia barely carried across the water. Inside Topkapı Palace, every lamp trembled, as if the building itself sensed what was coming. Hürrem's screams tore through the marble corridors like the cries of a dying eagle. Suleiman the Magnificent, the man who had conquered Belgrade and Rhodes before he was 30, stood outside the birth chamber in full armor, hand on his sword, waiting for a son. The midwives had promised him a lion cub. The door finally opened. The oldest midwife, face white as the snow outside, fell to her knees. In her arms lay not a prince, but a girl. Suleiman took the child. He looked into eyes that already burned like emeralds in firelight. For the first time in his adult life, the conqueror of half the world wept openly. Her name will be Mihrimah, he said, voice breaking. Sun and moon. This daughter will eclipse every son I have, every crown I have won. Behind him, the palace astrologer, an old Persian who had served 3 sultans, whispered to no one, "This child will either illuminate the world or burn it to the ground." Childhood, the education of a storm. By age 4, she could read Arabic, Persian, and Turkish. By 5, she was carried into the imperial map room on golden cushions. Suleiman sat her on his knee before maps painted in blood red and gold. "Look, my lioness," he said, tracing the borders with a finger still scarred from Rhodes. "This line is ours today. One day you will push it farther than I ever dreamed." At night, Hürrem came like a crimson shadow. She never told bedtime stories. She told war stories. She stroked Mihrimah's hair and whispered, "Beauty is your shield, intelligence your dagger, cruelty your crown. In this palace, no one will ever lay a hand on you, because you will strike first and you will strike last." At 7, she tasted blood for the first time. Mahidevran's son Mustafa, playing in the rose garden, pulled her hair in childish rage. The next morning, Hürrem had Mahidevran dragged before the entire harem. Silver rods rose and fell. Claws raked the former favorite's face until blood ran like tears. Little Mihrimah watched from behind a latticed screen, emerald eyes cold as winter steel. That day she learned the only law that mattered. Mercy is suicide. At 10, she rode beside her father on the Hungarian campaign. After Mohacs, when the battlefield was still warm with blood, Suleiman drew his own sword, still dripping, and placed it across her tiny hands. "One day this sword will answer only to you." At 12, she orchestrated her first death. A favorite concubine of Mahidevran had dared call her spoiled within earshot of a deaf-mute slave. Mihrimah told her mother. 3 nights later, the girl was found floating face down in the palace cistern, silk bowstring around her throat. No one ever spoke of it again. Age 17, the golden cage and the forbidden flame, 1539. Hürrem chose the groom, Rüstem Pasha, a man carved from ice, ambition, and accounting ledgers. The wedding lasted 7 days and 7 nights. Istanbul drowned in gold, music, and the scent of 10,000 roses. But on the wedding night, behind doors sealed with wax and guarded by black eunuchs, Mihrimah wept in her white bridal gown heavy with pearls. because her heart had already crossed the Bosphorus and climbed the scaffolding in Edirne. Mimar Sinan, love written in stone and silence. He was 50, she was 17. Their first meeting took place at midnight on the highest platform of the future Süleymaniye. The city slept below them like a black sea. Above, the sky blazed with 1,000 stars. Sinan's hands smelled of limestone and eternity. Mihrimah's smelled of Damascus rose oil and rebellion. He knelt before her, white beard touching the wooden planks. "I have given my life to stone," he said, voice rough as the blocks he carved. "But for you I would live another lifetime, and another after that." She placed her hand on his beard and answered, "Then build me 2 mosques, one for you, one for me. Place them exactly 1 arrow shot apart, so that every year on my birthday the sun sets behind one minaret and the moon rises behind the other. Let the whole city witness that sun and moon can exist in the same sky, because I command it." Sinan bowed his head until it touched her feet, and he kept his promise. He built her the Süleymaniye, the greatest mosque the world had yet seen, its dome higher than Hagia Sophia's. Mihrimah emptied her personal treasury, chest after chest of gold and jewels, to raise her own mosque on the Asian shore in Üsküdar. The distance between the 2 minarets, exactly 1 arrow shot, measured by Sinan himself with the bow he had carried as a janissary in his youth. Every 21st March, as the sun sank behind Süleymaniye in a blaze of blood and gold, the moon rose behind Mihrimah's mosque, pale and perfect. Sun and moon in the sky at the same moment. For 500 years, Istanbul has watched this miracle and whispered the same name, her true, ruthless love, the throne. Yet the deepest fire in Mihrimah's soul was never for any man. It was for power absolute. When Hürrem died in 1558, Mihrimah was 36. That same day, Suleiman summoned her to the throne room. He placed the imperial seal in her palm, with hands that trembled for the first time in 50 years. "From this moment," he said, voice breaking, "you are my eyes, my ears, my right hand. No decree leaves this palace without your mark." From that day forward, no Grand Vizier, no prince, no ambassador, no foreign king breathed without her permission. The traps she wove with silk and poison. 1553. Shehzade Mustafa planned in midnight meetings lit only by a single candle, mother and daughter face to face. Forged letters bearing Mustafa's seal, forged spies carrying tales of treason, forged tears in Hürrem's eyes before Suleiman. Mustafa rode proudly into his father's war tent at Konya, believing he was to be named heir. 7 deaf mutes, faces wrapped in black, strangled him with a silk bowstring, while Suleiman watched from behind a curtain, face carved from stone. That evening, Mihrimah climbed to the highest terrace of Topkapı, looked across the dark Bosphorus, and smiled the coldest smile the palace had ever seen. "Now it is our turn." 1561. Her own brother, Bayezid. When Bayezid raised the banner of rebellion in Anatolia, Mihrimah went to her aging father at dawn. She knelt, kissed his hand, and spoke with tears that were not entirely false. "He is no longer your son. He is your enemy. If you spare him, he will sit on your throne while your body is still warm." Suleiman, eyes hollow, sent 400,000 gold coins to Shah Tahmasp of Persia. Bayezid and his 5 small sons were strangled in a Persian dungeon, their bodies wrapped in carpets and returned like parcels. Mihrimah did not attend the funeral. That night she ordered every lamp in the palace extinguished and sat alone in darkness until dawn. 1574 onward. Safiye Sultan. Her niece by marriage, her mirror, her mortal enemy. For 30 years they waged war with smiles, gifts, and poison. Mihrimah had slow arsenic slipped into Safiye's rose sherbet. Safiye had Mihrimah's favorite black eunuch murdered in his sleep. Mihrimah had Safiye's jewels vanish from locked chests only she held the key to. Safiye spread rumors that Mihrimah was secretly Christian. One of Mihrimah's last recorded sentences whispered to her maids with a smile sharp as a dagger, "When I die, Safiye will dance on my grave, but my grandson will tear her out by the roots and salt the earth where she stood." Her only weakness, Sinan. When the master architect died in 1588, Mihrimah was 66. She did not go to the funeral. Instead, she ordered every lamp in Topkapı extinguished at sunset. For 3 days she ate nothing, spoke to no one, and locked herself in the room where Sinan had once drawn plans by candlelight. When they prepared her body after death, under her pillow they found a small rough stone he had pressed into her hand on that first night in Edirne. A single letter was carved upon it, M. The final farewell to her father, 1566, Sigetvar. Suleiman lay dying in his campaign tent, body swollen with dropsy, mind still sharp. He summoned Mihrimah across half of Europe. She arrived covered in road dust and tears, knelt, and combed his hair with trembling fingers while reading the Yasin Surah until her voice broke. His last words, barely audible above the rain on canvas: "I can leave this world with open eyes, because you exist." She fainted beside his bier at the funeral prayer in Süleymaniye, collapsing like a minaret struck by lightning. She had these words carved beneath his turban on the tomb: "I was my father's daughter. I was his light." The end. 1580. Age 58. She caught pneumonia standing barefoot in the snowy courtyard of her mosque in Üsküdar, watching the masons set the last tile while wind whipped her silver-gold hair. On the night she knew death was coming, she called her 4 most trusted maids, the only ones who had served her since childhood, and gave one final order, voice steady as ever: "Bury me beside Sinan. Let no one, not even my grandson the Sultan, ever know where." To this day, no one knows exactly where she lies. Some say a forgotten corner of Süleymaniye, some say beneath the pulpit of her own mosque, some swear she rests inches from Sinan's humble grave in his little garden tomb behind Süleymaniye. But every 21st March, when the sun sets over Istanbul in a blaze of blood and gold, and the moon rises pale and perfect between those 2 immortal minarets, the oldest people of the city still whisper the same words: "Mihrimah has gone back to her Sinan." Because she never chose between love and power. She seized both with the same hands. She set both ablaze with the same smile. And history has never forgotten the woman who made the sun and moon rise together and turned half an empire to ashes doing it. Because Mihrimah Sultan was not merely a woman, she was a storm, and storms are never forgotten.